You know, if we want to learn to hear the voice of God, one of the things we need to pay attention to is nonverbals. Because God doesn't always speak with his voice. Sometimes he speaks without saying a word. Well, you say, how is that possible? Well, if you're married, you know how it's possible. Husbands and wives communicate that way all the time. Sometimes with a warning look, sometimes with an affectionate look. But husbands and wives know how to communicate without a word being spoken. Parents and children know how to communicate without a word being spoken. It doesn't mean that there aren't times when a lot of words are spoken. It just means that we learn to communicate also with nonverbals, and we pay attention to one another's nonverbals. As you get a more intimate walk with God, you'll begin to tune in to his nonverbals. Now let me tell you how one of those nonverbals works. Sometimes God will call your attention to a thing or to a person. Let me give you an example. There came a time when someone asked John the Baptist to give an account of himself, and he said, well, I knew someone else was coming, and I didn't know who it was going to be, but the Lord said to me, when you see the Holy Spirit descend on someone and remain on him, he is the one that you are prophesying about. And so John the Baptist did what he was supposed to do. He baptized people one after another. But one day here came a man, and something was different about him. And as John began doing the baptism, suddenly he realized who he was, and he says, we've got this backwards. You should be baptizing me, not me baptizing you. And Jesus said to him, oh no, we need to do it this way to fulfill all righteousness. And John didn't understand it, but he went ahead. And when Jesus came up out of the water, the Holy Spirit descended upon him in bodily form like a dove. And then John said, that's the one. That's the one I've been prophesying about, the one who's coming after me, the one who's greater than me. How did he know him? Well, God had spoken some things to him, but then there came a message from God that came without a word. It came when the dove landed on Jesus. You see what was happening there? All that God did by causing the dove to land was he caused John to know without a word, this is the one. Okay, so now you go into a meeting, and you're supposed to minister, and you have said, Lord, I want to make room for you to do some things by the Spirit. Well, I haven't physically seen a dove land on anybody in years of ministry, but I would describe it this way. Sometimes I look at a room full of people, and it's as though I'm looking at a black and white photograph, and God has taken one of those yellow marker pens, a highlighter, and he's highlighted one person. And I look at this black and white crowd. Now, it's not physically like that. I see in color. But it's like one person has been highlighted. And so then I'll speak to that one person and say, do you mind if I minister to you? And usually I'll say to them, I'm not going to try to embarrass you. I don't mean to put you on the spot. And usually they relax, and I go ahead and minister to them. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen God do something in that kind of a scenario. But here's the key. The key is he points someone out, and he highlights that person. And then if I have enough of a sense of adventure to respond to that, it's not that I've obeyed the Lord if I do it, and I've disobeyed the Lord if I don't, because you can't call it disobedience if God didn't tell me what to do, and I didn't do it. But if he calls my attention to someone, I need to follow through by seeing what's going on. May I pray for you? And see where the Spirit of God takes it from there. And guess what? If he doesn't take it very far, I won't hurt anything praying for someone. That won't hurt a thing. Oh, but if he does take it somewhere, then something wonderful happens. And when it does, it happened because it began with a nonverbal. So this is the point. As we're learning to hear the voice of God, pay attention to his nonverbals. Sometimes I go and I minister at Dunamis Resources in Las Vegas. My wife and I are good friends of Dennis and Lenny Walker, who run the ministry there, and it's a school of the Spirit. One of the ladies who's been coming there for a few years is named Lucy, and she sometimes goes out and she will minister to people, and then she comes back, and I go to a meeting at Dunamis, and there's always a few minutes for spoils of war when people get up and they tell how God has used them and what He's done with them that week. And Lucy will get up and tell about going somewhere, and she led someone to Christ, and then she got someone else filled with the Holy Spirit, and then there was someone whose knees had been giving them pain for years, and she got them miraculously healed. And all of this, and I would listen to her testimonies, and I would think, I would love to be like that. I'd love to do things like that. And then she came up to me and said, I want to thank you. You're the one who imparted this to me. I said, what? I didn't impart that to you. She says, yes, you did. Do you remember when you came here and you talked about the black and white pictures and God taking the yellow marker? I said, yeah, I remember that. She says, that's what I've been doing. She says, I just go somewhere and I look around and I say, Lord, who have you highlighted? And whoever that person is, I go to them and I see what God will do. Well, now, why am I telling you about Lucy? I'm telling you about Lucy because you can take what I'm telling you and you can do more with it than I've ever done. And I hope you do. But you see, I've done a little bit with it. And the little bit that I've done, I've seen that it pays off. I've seen that it releases the Holy Spirit if I respond to God's nonverbals. So if we miss a few along the way, we miss a few. We're like fishermen. Jesus says, I make you fishers of men. So we're like fishermen, and sometimes we have the story of the one that got away, but sometimes we have the story of the one that we caught, and we saw God do something and work in someone's life. So either way, pay attention to God's nonverbals. If you're slow to catch on to them, be patient with yourself and keep looking for Him. And as you do, you're going to get better and better at responding when He speaks, even if He speaks without a word.